Greetings all, this is Claudia Manchanda, Radical Herbalist, and today's plant is Herb Roberts, which is considered a weed, but it's a beautiful medicinal plant. It's also called Stinking Bob because it has a kind of funky aroma that's been compared to burning rubber. It's also been compared to being kind of coriander-like. I think it varies very much where you pick it and where it grows, and older plants tend to taste more bitter. Some people love it, some people don't like it. I'm one of those people that I like it sometimes and not other times, depending on where it grows. It seems to have a lot of variance in the way it manifests, depending on where it's situated and its age, etc. So here, let me show you it. So here we have the herb Robert, and its botanical name is Geranium robertianum, and it's also, as I said, called Stinking Bob. It's a type of cranesbill, and it was supposedly named after a Cistercian monk or abbot in France called Robert of Molesme, who lived, I think, in 1028, I think 1111, and he was, an abbot herbalist. But there may be another reason it's called Herb Robert, but that's what I've read about. As you can see, the leaves have these pinnate leaves with all coming out from a central area. I don't know if you can see that it's hairy all over. Can we get into the hairs? It's very, very hairy. The stems vary in colour. They can be light green, they can be red, like deep red, which is a signature for blood in herbal medicine. And this plant is associated with staunching hemorrhage, particularly hemorrhages in the mouth, in the gastrointestinal tract, with things like inflammatory bowel disease like ulcerative colitis, or sores in the mouth that are open. In fact, studies have shown that even with cancers of the mouth, that this herb stops cancer cell migration. It's also used for heavy periods, and it's got chemicals in it called tannins, and they're the chemicals that are sort of most noted in this plant. And tannins are used to tan leather, and they make mucous membranes close, so they seal and make a barrier. And many tannins, which are also chemicals called polyphenols, also have, very significant anti-cancer and antioxidant activity. This plant is very stinky, as I said, and hence the name Stinking Bob. And the chemicals that make it stinky are essential oils, and it's got many essential oils, I think about 50 of them have been identified. The most notable one is linalool, which I think is about 13% of the essential oils. Another one is called alpha terpenol, which is like up to about 3%, and then it's got many others. And the essential oils of the plant have been studied, and they're antiplasmid, they're antioxidant, they stop bleeding. That's just the essential oils themselves through chemical messaging. They're antiseptic and they're diuretic. So this plant, one of its properties is that it helps you to detox through urination. One of the key words in this plant is bleeding, and that it stops bleeding, as I've said, and that's due to the tannins. And one of the notable tannins is, it's called a dihydroellagitannin, that's also in the tropical fruit rambutans, and the chemical is called granine, spelled Granine. IIN, and it's a really interesting chemical that's an immunomodulator. It lowers tumour necrosis factor alpha and nuclear factor kappa B, and it activates mTOR and PI3K pathways in cancer, stimulating apoptosis, and that's pro-gut cell death in cancer. So this remedy has a kind of folkloric reputation for being anti-cancer, but it's also been studied for having anti-cancer mechanisms, and many of the studies are in vitro, not in vivo, but it's a herbal remedy that seems to have a lot of deafening cancer, chemo preventative, cancer protective properties, and a lot of people attribute this plant to actually helping their health. One thing to consider with Herb Robert, that it bioaccumulates heavy metals, and it's associated with chelating metals in the body, but that also means that wherever you harvest it in nature, it means that you've got to make sure that the soil is free from heavy metals. What's interesting about the plant is it comes up very quickly and it's quite opportunist, and when I have it growing in pots a lot, it just sort of really readily grows everywhere. I always feel like it's quite safe and it doesn't have an opportunity to acquire heavy metals. What's really interesting about the seed head is that it has like a sort of catapult mechanism, and when the seed heads have dried out, there's like a spring-like mechanism that makes the seeds scatter for at least up to 5 meters, which I find absolutely incredible. It makes sense why it spreads everywhere. Another thing I find really interesting about Herb Robert is it's immensely easy to weed, or to actually get out of a pot. So let me just show you. If you actually want to get rid of it, you just lift it up, and the whole root has got a very shallow root. It just comes out. It's really easy to weed. So I'm always really horrified on websites when I read about using carcinogenic glyphosate to get rid of something like Herb Robert, when all you have to do is just lift it out and the whole lot just comes out. Even though it's really keen to self-seed, it's really easy to get rid of as well. And it's really, I always see it as that it's really keen to come with you, because it regenerates so well, but it's so easy to just pull out of the soil and to come into the kitchen with you. So Herb Robert also contains vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, calcium, magnesium, iron, phosphates, but it's also very high in tannins, as I've said before, and if you take it regularly and often, it will stop the absorption of food if you take it with food, but if you take it regularly, it will also give you minerals. So the way it's taken is very relevant. I've read on a few herbal sites that the herb contains the element germanium, but I've not seen any evidence of it in clinical papers or anywhere. And germanium's kind of like a not hugely studied chemical element. Its atomic number is 32, and it's used as a semiconductor in transistors and electronics. It's insoluble in water, and the studies on germanium in lots of studies show that it's like kidney, liver and nerve damaging. However, the organic trace elements of germanium, which are found in shiitake mushrooms, garlic, tuna, tomatoes, ginseng, aloe veras and comfrey, are seen as being oxygenators of the body and help carry oxygen to the body. And studies of germanium have shown it to be neuroprotective and also to be helping with conditions where the brain has cerebral ischemia, which means that oxygen is not going into the brain. So as I said, I've yet to see evidence that the plant actually has germanium, because I've not actually found evidence of that, but I've read that it does have it, but without any referencing. So germanium is like a free radical scavenger, it's analgesic, it's a heavy metal detoxifier and antiviral. I'm going to end this video by saying that the traditional uses for this herb include arthritis, cancer. It would theoretically help with conditions like chronic fatigue and metabolic syndrome. It's been used for colitis and cataracts. It's used for bleeding gums. Apparently it's radioprotective and radiosensitizing, which means it helps against radiation damage and helps to make better outcomes with radiotherapy. It's been used for cystitis. It's been used for people who bruise easily. It's been used for gut dysbiosis and bloating, for ulcers in the mouth throughout the gastrointestinal tract, for poultices. And I'm going to end by saying that the radical herbalist Nicholas Culpeper in the 17th century said that Herb Robert is a herb of Venus. He commended it against the stone, so that's kidney stones, to stay blood, that's to stop bleeding, and that it speedily heals green wounds and old ulcers in the privy parts. So I would estimate that that's STIs in the genitals. It's been studied that it's anti-diabetic. It's an all-round interesting herb, really, and it's one that I recommend smelling, tasting a bit, considering cooking with, considering making teas with. And the other thing to remember is that different chemicals come out in teas, and different chemicals come out in oils, and different chemicals come out in the tinctures. This herb's also been used as a poultice for wounds. Thank you. Bye.